So if you want to make trading a full-time career, you have to get very good at dealing with losses. And usually that's a challenge for a lot of people. The reason for that is because if you've taken trading as a path in life, you're probably not an ordinary person. You probably are an individual that is very competitive, very ambitious, has a high self-esteem, high self-confidence, and probably very intelligent. And these traits are wonderful to have in life and probably serve us very well in a workplace or in a career or even at school or university. But when it comes to trading, these things will work directly against us, which is why it's such a big problem, because traders are usually not used to dealing with a loss. But the reality is, as a trader, you have to realize losses are normal. Losses are part of the game, and there's no such thing as avoiding losses. So what we rather have to do is become very strong at dealing with losses. Now, I'm sure this is a situation you can relate to, because I've had this situation so many times in my earlier days in my trading career where I'll go through a losing streak and I didn't know what to do, where I would take 4 or 5 losses, maybe even in one day, and that set me on tilt and I would react hyper emotionally. I didn't know why I was taking these losses. And when we have to actually realize taking losses is part of the game and factored in, and it's something that's so obvious, but it's hard to really recognize that when you're in the midst of a losing streak, when the emotions are coming and all of those questions and doubts are coming to your mind of, does trading even work? Has this all been a facade? Does my strategy even work? Am I competent enough to be a trader? And that's usually where things get a lot worse, where you not only have taken a 4 or 5 loss losing streak, now your emotions are so high, you start over analyzing positions, you start questioning your strategy, you start acting with greed, you start acting with fear, you start acting with emotion and become responsive to the situation as opposed to reacting objectively to a trading situation and a trading plan. So in this video, I'm going to give 3 actionable tips. But before we get into that, I want to give 2 analogies. The first analogy is, I'm sure you've seen those David Attenborough videos where you're watching animals in the wild and you'll see a gazelle, and the gazelle is roaming free, it's minding its own business, it's very peacefully eating and grazing on the grass. But you'll notice that the moment it hears a footstep in the distance, the moment that gazelle recognizes a single threat, you'll realize it will instantly jump. It will instantly start running away without even analyzing the situation, without analyzing if there was really a threat. You realize that that gazelle runs. But what you'll notice is that gazelle that is minding its business, that is peacefully grazing away, having its breakfast or lunch, it is not in a heightened state. It's in a peaceful state, or the best way to put it, it's in a calm state. But it's not in a completely neutral, calm, peaceful, meditative state. That gazelle is actually in a calm but alert state. It is aware of any potential threat, it is aware of its surroundings, but is not acting in an irrational way. It is not in a stressed mode. It is peacefully grazing, it is calm but alert. And that is the best example I can give of how we should be at our trading desk when we are looking at the market. We should not be heightened, we should not be emotional, we should not be charged, we should be completely calm, completely stoic, but not emotionless. We should be alert, we should be aware to any threats and dangers that the market may present, and we have to be aware and observe our emotions as opposed to be panicking and in a fight or flight state. And the second analogy I want to give that is a very good one, and it's from a book that I read. It gives the analogy of 2 monks, where it's an older monk and a younger monk, and the 2 monks had taken a vow for life that they would never touch a woman. And then one day they were crossing a river, and the bridge that they normally took to cross that river had broken. So they noticed that there was a group of people trying to cross that river, and amongst that group was women. So the women asked the monks, can you help us cross this river? But the monks had already decided. They made a vow to each other and the vow to their God that they would never touch a woman in their life, no matter what. So after a bit of pondering and hesitation from the younger monk, he noticed that the older monk had already picked up the woman on his shoulders and helped her cross the river. And the younger monk was so in shock that as he crossed the river, he didn't say anything and watched the older monk carry this woman across the river. And the younger monk was so confused why he took this decision despite their vow, and he was pondering about this for hours and hours, that the older monk had recognized that the younger monk was not there. He was not present. He was too consumed in his own head, thinking about what had just happened. So the older monk asks the younger monk and says, what are you thinking about? What's going on? And the younger monk says, look, we made a vow to never touch a woman again. How could you touch that woman and help her cross the river? And the older monk said to the younger monk, which is the key lesson here, I dropped that woman off at the riverbed 5 hours ago. You are still carrying her right now. Now, the lesson in that is when a situation happens, and let's say in the markets you take a loss, we should be quick to recuperate from that loss and not hold the burden and the emotion and the trauma that comes with taking a loss. We should be quick to recover and carry on in a normal way. Just like the older monk, he did what he had to do to help the lady, and then the moment he had put her down, he put down that emotion with it and carried on about his day and continued to be present and carry on about his meditations. Whereas the younger monk was holding that burden with him for hours and hours that affected his presence. And the same comes in trading. So whenever I've been in a losing streak, I can't help but take certain emotional decisions. And those emotional decisions I'm sure you can relate to, where let's say I've gone into a bit of drawdown and I've taken a loss. My reaction is I need to claw back that loss immediately. So there's a sense of urgency that comes to us. Not only that, we feel like we need to recover our losses, but we increase on risk. So let's say we're ordinarily risking 1% per trade. If we're 5% in drawdown now, we naturally all feel like, okay, let me just increase my risk. Or let's say I see a good setup, let me double down, let me increase my risk. And what you realize is the more you increase your risk, especially on a losing streak, and therefore you're not in the same mental clarity, you'll take more and more losses anyway. And those losses will be bigger and bigger because you're trying to double down. And that's when I've really entered a spiral phase in my trading career where I've taken so many losses. And then because of those emotions of those losses, I take even more losses, but I also add position, add size to those losses. So my equity curve becomes exponentially negative. And not only do you have a spiral based on your risk management, you start to second guess yourself. And I've been there where I'm like, okay, no matter if I've been profitable for a few weeks or a few months, I start to think, was that all luck? Was this all a fluke? Did my strategy not even work? I was just having a lucky period. I started to question people I looked at in the industry and said, every trader must be fake. Everybody's just selling lifestyle. Everybody's selling signals or broker links. And I started to question the industry. I started to question my strategy. I started to question myself of, I'm not good enough. I'm not made out for this. And all of this self-doubt came into my mind. And additionally, what I realized is I started to overanalyze, where I was really hyper-focused on the market and say, okay, no, this is not the setup. No, I can't take this. This is not good enough. Once I exited my gambling phase, which is just trying to win back and throwing positions, then I entered a very reserved state where I'm like, okay, no, I need to wait for the perfect setup. And what you realize is you enter a position of such fearfulness and you enter in a position of being so conservative and so reserved that the wins that are part of your strategy, the wins that are part of your plan that was supposed to bring you back to profitability, you end up not taking them because you're too fearful and you have too much doubt in your head. So what happens is you start taking losses that you should not be taking, and the wins that you should be taking, you stop taking those positions. So now that's a double-edged sword where your losses are getting increased and your wins are getting decreased, and you enter a full-on tilt. And I'm sure that's a situation that every single one of us can relate to. So how do we counteract this, and what is the best way we can equip ourselves to make sure we don't enter this tilt or spiral in our trading career? First thing to realize is losses are factored in. If you've seen my case study breakdowns and you've seen my track record and performance, you'll realize over a long-term horizon, my win rate is actually selected to be between 45 and 55%. Now that means over 100 trades, it is guaranteed I will take, factored in part of my plan, I will take 50 losses. So now I don't know how my losses are going to come. Is it going to come win, loss, win, loss, win, win, loss, win, loss? Is it going to be like that? Or is it going to be loss, 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 win, loss? We don't know how those 50 wins and 50 losses are going to be presenting in our performance, because the reality is the distribution of your wins and losses in the market is completely random. The market conditions dictate how your wins and losses come, and all we have to do is keep sticking to the plan. So when we go through a losing period of 5 losses in a row and we know that we stuck to our plan, we didn't do any irrational decisions, we didn't deviate away from our strategy, that's a process in itself. But if we know that we're taking sound, correct decisions and we are taking 4 or 5 losses in a row, there is no reason we should enter a spiral, because we know that that was factored in. That was part of the plan. And there's very few things in life where you should have that mentality, because the reality is if you're failing an exam, you realize you didn't study enough. You didn't practice and prepare enough for that exam. If you keep failing job interviews, it's because you were not prepared enough as a candidate. And therefore you realize there's actions to take after you take a loss. But in trading, has high self-esteem, high confidence, young men who are ambitious, who have taken a non-conventional route in life, we have to realize when we receive a loss, we have to do absolutely nothing, because that is factored in. Now that is after the process of you've curated a strategy, you've built it to prove it has an edge backed by data over time. That's a whole process in itself. But if that due diligence and strategy preparation is there and we receive multiple losses, our reaction should be nothing. We should be in that calm, alert phase, and we should not be reactionary, and we should not hold on to the burden of a loss. Rather, we quickly recuperate and continue on executing based on our plan. The mistake a lot of people can make is deviating away from the plan, starting to take slightly riskier trades, but we are hoping we're going to win. Nobody enters the market thinking they're going to lose. So if you realize whenever you enter the market, you're hopeful, you're in a greedy state as it is. Whenever you're in that state already and you've lowered your confluences thinking, okay, this trade looks like it's going to be a good buy. It's not my perfect A+ setup, but it looks good enough. Let me jump in, and let me jump in with more size. That right there is you leading yourself to a gambler's addiction and a gambler's habit. And that's exactly where you need to stop yourself, because even if you allow yourself to do it a few times, you're already starting to introduce a gambler's mindset into a professional situation, which is being a statistical, analytical trader that is based on data, based on performance, and based on a strategy. And the moment you creep in a little bit of gambler's mindset into there. It's a vicious cycle and it's a slippery slope that could be the beginning of the end. So a few things that you can do when you are entering a losing period and you feel these emotions and you're feeling the weight of your losses is what I sometimes actually do is I divide my accounts, and I don't have just one large account. I have multiple accounts. So when I know that I'm going through a losing phase and my mindset is not fully there, I'll go onto my smaller account that is reserved, that I'm doing smaller risk on, and I'm taking quality setups on only to build back my confidence. And that is only a temporary period when I know that my psychology is not there. But I know that if my psychology is good and I'm not feeling the weight of my loss, I know I can continue to trade as I do with the same risk management and maybe use another account that is only for A+ setups and recuperate the self-confidence that is there, because I know that I'm going to encounter losses no matter what. And therefore, instead of being on my main account where I might do slightly larger risk and I'm going through a losing phase, instead of managing that, I come to a smaller account that is more reserved, more conservative, smaller risk to build back my confidence. Now, a very common thing that I faced in my trading career was when I went through a losing phase, I started to question everything and started to question myself. And what I realized was the moment I went through a losing phase, I would start to YouTube things. I would start to research more online. I would start to watch other mentors. I would start to watch TikToks and Instagram reels about trading education in hopes of finding new information to address my losses. And what I realized is I might be learning more things, and that those things might be also valid. It might be good concepts I was learning, but I didn't know how introducing these new confluences into my trading system, I don't know if that was always a positive outcome, because now it could actually leave me in a more reserved state because I had more confluences to wait for. Therefore, I was not taking the same trade frequency, and therefore the winning trades that I ordinarily would have taken, I was no longer taking them. Or I'd actually self-doubt myself and say, okay, I don't know enough, and I would be not acting on the same trades that I used to take that were also going to be my winning recovery trades. I'd stop taking them because I'd be in a doubtful phase of my strategy doesn't work. Especially when the emotion is attached to the money of taking a loss and you feel it in your pocket, you feel it in your chest. It's normal to question everything. It's normal to look for information because that's what we always do. If we fail an exam, we go and study more information to make sure we don't fail again. But if you have built a strategy and you know that over 1,000 trades you've tested it, you've got a track record of 6 months and you know you're profitable, you know that the best thing for you to do is not deviate away from your plan and not introduce new things into your strategy which could have a positive or negative effect. In fact, if you want to improve your strategy by adding more information, that should be tested in isolation as an A/B split test with controlled variables and one modified variable to see the effect of that on your trading performance in isolation. But trying to wing it in the markets and introduce things randomly one week is not a professional thing to be doing. That is in fact introducing, once again, a gambler's mindset, but in a more professional way because you think you're doing the right thing by adding more information. And what I found quite interesting is the smarter, more intelligent people that do well in life, do well at school and university, are not always the people that are best traders, because when you have a high intelligence, you also naturally have a high ego, which usually in real life is a benefit, but in the game of trading, it is actually working against you, and you actually need to be in a state where you can control your emotions, control your mind, and the better trader is the one that can actually properly control their emotions and control their mind. What you realize is trading is not about having a better strategy. At times, it's just about having a better mind and being in a calm, reserved, stable, stoic state. And one last closing thought that I had was, in my earlier days in my trading career, I was a very curious mind and I was always questioning things. And that's probably the reason I got into trading in the first place. I got into trading because I saw the lifestyle, I saw everything on Instagram. But when I started to investigate into the markets, it was like a puzzle that I had to solve. And that curiosity, that fire inside of me to find answers, to build a strategy, to learn more and more about the market, that curious mind is what led me forward. And what you realize is as you get more mature as an investor and a trader, that curiosity doesn't always serve you best, because when you face losses, when you face adversity, which is part of the plan, which is factored in, our curiosity kicks in and we want to search for why. Why did we lose? Did I do something wrong? And that curiosity inside of us, that's definitely inside of me, is something I had to learn to control, because I knew that after I was trading for 5-6 years, I had so much data, I had built a high market IQ, a high market intuition, market experience, and I also built a strategy that had an edge, that had data to prove it. I had everything I needed, and I had time in the market to start to understand my psychology. So now, whenever I was going through a losing period, my curiosity and my psychology would always go back to default, which is what I learned in life, which is if I take a loss, let me learn why, let me take action. But trading, I have to realize I have to be calm and alert. I have to let go of the weight of a loss because everything is factored in, because I have done the pre-work. Now, when you hear this advice and you hear from me saying something like this, it's very normal for you to directly implement that right away. But you have to notice one key important thing, and that is, are you in the correct position to start to build on your psychology? Because a lot of people say psychology is 90% of trading, and maybe there's an element of truth of that. I wouldn't say 90%, I would say more 40 or 30%, but it's not about which one is worth more. It's more a case of they're in stages. Psychology is just as important as technical analysis, but you have to have strong technical analysis first before you start to even consider building your psychology. So once you have a secure plan in place, you have proved you have a trading edge, you've proved you know, you have data data and a track record to prove it. Now it becomes, I have a strategy, I have an edge. Let me learn how to follow that edge. So it's first build a strategy, then build your psychology. So don't try and skip to that stage where you don't even know if you have a real strategy and you're starting to work on your psychology and you're being stoic and you're not being curious and you're not learning why you took a loss and you're not looking to rectify these things. These are the decisions you make when you've proven to yourself you have a winning strategy. If you've not done that work yet, stay curious, stay questioning everything, look into your losses and keep that investigative phase that brought you into the industry, that curiosity, that feeling of I need to solve the market, I need to solve this puzzle. That fire is passion. And that passion is what's going to get you through these hard times. But you have to realize that's going to get you to one stage in your career, and it is needed when you are curating and building a strategy. Once you've done that, let go of that fire. Let go of that emotion. Let go of that curiosity because it served you up until that point. But as the saying goes, what got me here will not get me there. So once you've reached that stage in your career where you have a strategy, let go of the emotions, stay calm, stay alert, and stay in a peaceful state. It's no longer about being intelligent. It's about being a person that can follow their plan. So those are the best lessons I've learned in terms of when I've faced losing streaks in my trading career at different stages in my trading career and how it is best to deal with losses. But that advice is not useful on its own. What I want you to do is go check out the case study video that I've linked here, because this case study breakdown is a very high advanced level breakdown that is going to help you understand the level you need to take your analysis to, the level you need to build your strategy to before you start implementing the tips that you learned in this video. So do go ahead and check that video out and I'll see you on the other side.